Yo, what's happening, guys, gals? Dat here. We're going to review my picks from week 6. A lot of my picks had really good showings, and there were a few duds, but that happens from time to time. The point is, the majority of the picks I went with were in the positive and low owned enough for me to get some money this week. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I only play the Sunday games, meaning just the games that start at 1 p.m. and 4:25 p.m. if you're on the East Coast. The games I don't really like to play are the ones from Thursday and from Monday, just because there isn't enough action going on because there's only one game happening. But I figured I'd let you guys know that. But anyway, let's go over my picks and see how I did. My quarterbacks did very well this week. Cousins had a great performance with 31.8 points. Watson was throwing touchdowns to everybody on the Texans roster, looking like Oprah out there, just giving away cars. He got 24.3 points. Breeze didn't do too bad, but for his price, I was expecting at least 20 points, so he was a dud for me on that front. But where I truly shined was my cheap, low-owned options at quarterback. Big Ben only put up 12.88 points, but he was 3% owned, and with that crazy touchdown pass to Antonio Brown at the end, he gave everyone who was on him a nice boost, so that was awesome. Palmer went crazy with Larry Fitzgerald and the rest of the receiving core for the Cardinals. He put up 21.92 points, a total way beyond his salary for the week, so kudos to him. But the MVP at quarterback this week is Josh McCown. I told you guys to watch McCown this week. He was going to be a sneaky GPP play, and boy was I right. 2% owned and put up 25.26 points against New England. Amazing job. Well done. Running backs. The holy trinity of running backs let me down this week, with the exception of Fournette. If Fournette didn't get hurt, he probably could have put up 30 points. He had 98 rushing yards and 1 touchdown before the end of the first quarter. It was just unbelievable. It's a shame he got hurt. I hope he recovers quickly. Gurley and Hunt were just complete busts this week. Hunt didn't show up until the very end of the game with Pittsburgh, and Gurley drug his feet the whole game. They started to show life at the end, but it was just far too little too late. So I was really, really disappointed with that. My cheap option running backs were also a bit on the disappointing side. Kamara and Thompson didn't do too bad. They just didn't do amazing. But I guess I can't complain. At least they got their point totals above their salary, so I'll take it. McGuire, on the other hand, really let me down. Once I heard that Bilal Powell was out, I thought he was going to have a great showing, but instead Forte got all the looks, leaving McGuire with just 22 rushing yards. Big, big disappointment at running back this week. My stacks this week for quarterback and wide receiver were pretty solid, like Big Ben and Antonio Brown, Palmer and Fitzgerald. But where things really took off was in the cheaper wide receiver picks I recommended, especially Marvin Jones Jr. Both he and Golden Tate had a monster game this week against the Saints, much higher than I anticipated, and adding them into my lineups was greatly beneficial. Will Fuller caught a touchdown again, but didn't have a whole lot of receptions. He only had 2 catches the whole game for 62 yards. But regardless, I'm glad one of those catches was a touchdown. Really gave me a nice boost there. Willie Snead, I knew if he did play, he was going to be eased in and barely have any action, and I was right there. But luckily, I had Adam Thielen in as another option, and if you took my advice, you were awarded with 9 receptions for 97 yards and 18.7 points. I wish he would have gotten that 3-point bonus for the 100 yards receiving, but they wrote out the clock with McKinnon once they had the lead, so what can you do, right? I don't blame him on that. Now, tight ends are usually not my strongest point when it comes to my picks, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that I had good fortune this week. Cameron Brate got 19.6 points off of 1 touchdown, 76 receiving yards, and 6 receptions. I was nervous with Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in after Winston got hurt, but it still turned out great. Ryan Griffin was another great play at only $4,000. He put up 10.2 points, which included 3 receptions, 52 receiving yards, and a 2-point conversion. But the talk of the day was Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He was an absolute beast, just running over Patriots all game long, and I was so pissed off when they overturned his 3rd touchdown of the day. I don't care what New York says or what the refs say, he had possession of that ball, and it was a touchdown. They got screwed big time. McCown and Austin Seferian-Jenkins would have had more points, but again, what can you do? I think it was a bullshit call. I was not happy at all. And defense. The Atlanta Falcons let me down big time. I had them in 40% of my lineups, and who would have guessed the Dolphins' offense to come alive this week? Landry was catching everything, and Ajayi was just running through the Falcons like they were junior varsity. The good news is that I had the Ravens in the other 60% of my lineups, and they came out with 20 points, including 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and 2 defensive touchdowns. Defense and special teams is always a crapshoot, but I'm happy. At least I got one of them right. And finally, here are 2 of my teams from this week that scored the highest and introduced me to some dead presidents. Had some really solid picks, but those few that underperformed were just heartbreaking. Amendola was barely targeted. Devontae Freeman didn't get into the end zone at all like I expected him to. I don't know what I was thinking with Njoku. Never put your faith in a Brown unless it's Antonio Brown, so I learned that the hard way. But shout out to Darren Fells, by the way. I took him on a hunch. It was just a gut feeling. He was 1% owned, and lo and behold, he scored a touchdown and gave me a huge boost there, so that was awesome. I'll have my picks up for Week 7 sometime next week. I was late with this last video, but I'll try to get it in a lot sooner for you guys. Again, if my picks helped you win in some way, send me some screenshots. I'll give you a shout out in the Week 7 video. Hit subscribe and like to see more content. Let's try to get to 25 likes this week. If we hit that mark, I will share one of my lineups on Twitter next week. Speaking of Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at DatFantasy88 for all my shenanigans and updates. Until then, cheers. Hope you guys had a good week.